whether we are actually medical professionals or whether we're just seekers on a path, whether we call the path yoga, whether we call the path spirituality, whether we call the path dharmic or righteous living, whatever we call it, what we know is that stress takes us off the path. We know that whatever way we are looking for peace, joy, divine connection, light in our lives, whether we call it enlightenment or whether we just say light, we know that stress takes us off it. Now, Pujya Swamiji said something very beautiful on the banks of Ganga, and he was speaking about illness. And he said that the greatest illness, the most fundamental illness that we suffer from, is the illness of our thoughts, the illness of what we think. And then he went into the concept of stress management and self-management. Now, most of us, if we go around the room and I say, okay, tell me what stresses you out, most of you would give me an answer about something that a family member does, your spouse, your children, maybe something that your boss does, or something that an employee does, or something that your colleague does. I'm really fine except when my colleague steals my work, or I'm really fine except when my boss belittles me in public, or asks me to do something that's over my head, or I'm fine until my employees can't remember what they're supposed to do, or I'm fine until my husband doesn't appreciate me, or my wife belittles me or insults me, or I'm fine until my children don't do their homework, or don't clean up their room, or don't eat their dinner. Whatever our thing is, most of us would say that that which causes us stress is something outside. Or I'm fine until I get stuck in traffic on the way home. I've worked all day long. I've got this plan that when I get home, I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to meditate. Maybe I'm going to take a jacuzzi. Maybe I'm going to cook up some good, healthy vegetarian food. But now, instead of getting home in 10 minutes, it's going to be 3 hours till I get home. So whatever our stress is, it's something outside of us. And what ends up happening is today it's one thing, tomorrow it's something else, the day after it's something else. But what we've done, and we speak about this frequently on an emotional and spiritual level, but today I want to take it onto a physical health level as well, is we've hooked our happiness, our peace, into something over which we have no control, something that someone else does. If you dance according to my tune, I'm peaceful. If when I say jump, you say how high, I'm happy. But what we also now know is that stress is actually at the foundation of the vast majority of illnesses these days. Almost everything, even the stuff that we think of as purely physical illnesses, are worsened, heightened by the thoughts in our mind. Worsened, heightened by our stress. And so much of it is actually created in stress. We don't have time now to go into all of the biochemistry of it, but it's actually incredibly exciting because what we know is that more important than the DNA sitting in our cell, more important than the DNA sitting in our cell is the environment in which that cell sits. The environment means the blood in which that cell sits, which means that that which floods our bloodstream, our hormones, all the chemicals that's flowing through our blood by what we think, by what's being secreted due to our adrenal glands, by what we eat. That environment, we now know, is actually more important than the DNA sitting in the cells, because it's that environment that determines how that DNA is actually going to manifest. Will the genes that you have be expressed or not? Will you actually get the cold or flu that someone has just sneezed or coughed into a room? Sitting in a room, 20 people are in the room, one person has the flu, they cough, they sneeze. Out of that 20, some are going to walk away scot-free as though the person had never sneezed. Others might get a little bit of something, scratchy throat. But a couple of people are actually going to come down with full-blown flus. And what we know is that that determinant, our immune system, is interacting with our emotions. Again, I don't have time to go into all the science of it, but it's incredibly exciting. We now know that what we thought were just emotional neurotransmitters in our brain are actually talking to, interacting with, impacting the cells of our immune system. So when Pujya Swamiji says self-management instead of stress management, well, what's self-management? It means, how can I unhook my happiness, my peace from the world around me? How can I learn to manage myself so that I'm not like the light bulb, as he always says, that somebody else switches on and off? You do what I say, I'm on. You don't do what I say, I'm off. How can I do that? And the way to do that is what we refer to as a spiritual practice. But it doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what spiritual path you're on, but a path that takes our antenna. These days everything's digital, but if you think about what TVs used to look like, with antenna that sat on top of the TV, picking up signal. And you imagine that our antenna are focused outside. And if we take those antenna and we focus them inside, so that within myself, my experience of okayness, my experience of enoughness, because that's actually what causes the stress. If we dissect it, why am I not in peace? Why am I not happy if my kids don't clean their room? Why am I not in peace or not happy when my employers or employees don't do what I want? Well, if you dissect all of that, if you look at all of that which steals our peace, steals our happiness, all of the individual incidents, what they all boil down to is a fear within us that what I want, what I think should happen to me in the world, won't. That my okayness, my enoughness is dependent on that. And when we're able to bring those antennae in, and we're able to actually experience within ourselves the fact that source of peace, that source of joy, that source of enoughness is within. We spoke yesterday about the source of misery being within. Well, the source of the opposite of misery is also within. And this is what the sages and the saints and the rishis of every religion have always told us. If you look at any religion, their mystics, their sages, their prophets, nobody came down and gave teachings that said, in order for your life to be successful, make sure you get together a bunch of employees who will always follow your instructions. In order for your life to be successful, make sure that you never get stuck in a traffic jam. In order for your life to be successful, make sure that your family members always do exactly what you tell them to do. Always appreciate you, always love you, always respect you. Make sure that you're always able to buy the nicest things. Nobody says that. The teachings are all the same. It's all about connection to the divine. Again, whether we experience that divine in the form of a God with a name, without a name, with a form, without a form, whether we experience it just in the form of what you could call spirit or consciousness or love, whether we experience it in trees or rivers, nature, doesn't matter. But when we're able to connect to that, and that's actually why, lastly on this topic, that's actually why things like being in nature are such wonderful, wonderful prescriptions for so much of that which ails us. Because it reconnects us. And so when we actually develop this ability to manage ourselves, it means that which is stealing my peace is my own ego. It is my own desires. It is my own expectations. It is my own filter through which I'm seeing the world. Doesn't mean I'm bad. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Doesn't mean if I'm sick, I've done something wrong. It just means that what I need to look at for answers is me. That rather than figuring out how to change the world, my path becomes about how can I change the glasses through which I'm seeing the world? How can I change the filter through which I'm moving through the world? I'll end this with my favorite story on the topic, which is the story of this beautiful man, wise man, and he's sitting under a tree in the shade at a crossroads. And a young boy is sitting beside him. And as they're sitting there, a man walks from one direction and comes to the old man and says, "That village up ahead, what are the people like in that village up ahead?" And the old man says, "Well, where are you coming from?" And he says, "Oh, I'm coming from such and such a village." And the old man says, "Well, what were the people like there?" And the man says, "Oh, they were horrible. They were liars. They were cheaters. They were deceitful. They were selfish." And the old man said, "I'm so sorry. But that's exactly what the people are like in the village up ahead." And the man thought, "Oh, God. But of course, where's he going to go? There's only one road, only one village." So depressed, he continues walking. Short while later, another man walks up and says, "Baba, what are the people like in the village up ahead? What's the village like?" And again, the old man says, "Well, where are you coming from? What are the people like there?" And he says, "Oh, I'm coming from such and such a village, and the people were just great. They were so loving, so sharing, so kind, so compassionate." And the old man says, "Well, I have great news for you. The people in the village up ahead are exactly the same. And so the man was very happy and he went along his way. And the young boy says to the old man, he says, "But Babaji, how is it possible? There's only one village up ahead. How is it possible that the people of that village are both selfish and lying and cheating and horrible, as you told the first person, and kind and compassionate and loving, as you told the second person?" And the old man said, "Because it's all in how we see them." So someone who has the habit, has the pattern of seeing people as being cheaters and liars and selfish, that's what he's going to find. And someone who has the habit of seeing people as kind and generous and compassionate, that's what he's going to find. And so that's the self-management. How can my eye be attuned in such a way so that I see in the world that which I want? How can I see it? And actually the very last point I want to mention on this is recent studies that have been done on the power of our thoughts to actually create change in the world outside. We know that our thoughts can change us. We know that if I'm angry, if I'm thinking the right thoughts, I can get myself out of anger. We know that if I'm in the midst of a stressful situation with my own power of thought, I can bring myself out of it. But what we now know is that the power of thought and the power of intention is so strong. And I'm talking about studies being done in America's top universities. Not like New Age yoga institutes, but actually research-based top medical, scientific institutions, universities, that have now found that our thoughts, even when at a distance from the target, have the power to change that. Whether it's rates at which plants grow, whether it's rates at which seeds germinate, whether it's rates at which immune system cells divide in a petri dish that someone else is holding. There have been an incredible number of studies on this, on the power of our thought and the power of our intention. So when we learn to harness that, when our focus becomes, as Pujya Swamiji said, self-management, then automatically the stress dissipates. And then what we'll find is a lot of the illnesses themselves dissipate or don't come. It's a beautiful inoculation. But even when they do come, doesn't mean you're not going to get bit by a mosquito that has malaria. Doesn't mean you're never going to fall down and break a leg or scratch your arm and bleed. Spirituality is not an inoculation against things like that. But what it means is that the suffering that accompanies those accidents, the suffering that accompanies those ailments, isn't there. And when the suffering isn't there, what we find is that, yeah, the body's the body. It's going to do what the body does. It's going to respond the way the body does. But when we are not mentally suffering with it, A, we heal a lot faster. And B, we don't experience it with suffering. So we're able to still be in peace, in joy, connected, even when the body may be having a challenge. The body may be in recovery. The body may need some extra help. But it becomes just the body, not our entire peace and joy along with it.